My name is Nora Hadibe. I am 26 years old and a teacher. The day my sister, Clara, laughed was the day I finally learned what silence could do to a person. Father had just been laid to rest, and the air inside the lawyer's office felt too still to breathe. I sat there with trembling hands, clutching the locket Father had given me before he passed. I believed it would be a reminder of his love, not a shield against betrayal. Clara sat across from me, her lips curved in that same practiced smile she wore at every village gathering, the one that made everyone think she was perfect. When the lawyer finished reading, my world fell apart. Everything, the house, the land, the savings, had been left to Clara. My name wasn't mentioned once. For a long moment, I just stared at the paper in his hand, thinking he'd made a mistake. But Clara leaned back and said softly, almost sweetly, "I guess Father trusted the one who actually made something of her life." Then she laughed, that sharp, cold laugh that would echo in my head for weeks. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. My throat burned. I looked at the lawyer, hoping he'd see through her lies, but his eyes stayed fixed on the documents. Clara's husband, a man with a gold watch and no warmth in his face, placed a firm hand on her shoulder. They looked like they had already celebrated my loss. That evening, I walked through Father's garden for the last time. The marigolds he'd planted were still blooming, bright and proud. I whispered a goodbye to him, even though part of me wanted to scream. I could have fought, I could have gone to court, but what would that do to Father's memory? He had always said, "Let kindness be your answer, even when the world roars in your face." So I packed my clothes, my teaching books, and the small framed picture of Father and me. The next morning, I left our family home with one last glance at the blue gate that had guarded my childhood. I rented a small room behind the primary school where I was teaching. The roof leaked, and the walls were thin enough to hear the neighbors' chickens, but it was mine, honest and quiet. The first night, I cried until the stars blurred. Then I told myself, I will keep teaching. I will keep giving, even if I have nothing left. My days settled into a new rhythm. I woke up before dawn, lit my little kerosene lamp, and prepared lessons for my students. The village kids, barefoot, curious and endlessly alive, became my light. Some days I couldn't afford lunch, but I still made sure every child had something to eat. Sometimes I shared half of my bread or bought bananas for the ones who looked too tired to learn. People whispered about Clara's grand new life in the city. Her parties, her silk dresses, her husband's new car. I tried not to listen. It was easier to focus on the laughter of children and the smell of chalk. One afternoon, as I left the school, I noticed an old man sitting under the tree near the gate. His clothes were worn, and his shoes looked like they had walked 1,000 roads. I thought he might be hungry, so I offered him part of my lunch, a small packet of rice and beans. He looked at me with eyes that were kind but unreadable. "You shouldn't give away what little you have," he said softly. "I have enough," I replied. "Sometimes sharing makes it feel like more." He smiled faintly, nodded, and ate in silence. For the next few days, he was there again, always at the same spot. I started saving part of my lunch for him, not because he asked, but because I couldn't bear the thought of him sitting hungry. One day, when it rained heavily and the school closed early, I waited under the roof's edge. The old man wasn't there. I was worried that he might be cold or lost. I left my umbrella leaning against the tree, hoping he'd find it. The next morning the umbrella was gone, and in its place was a folded paper. Inside it were just 5 words written in neat, slanted handwriting. "Kindness never walks alone." The note left me uneasy and curious at the same time. No one in the village had handwriting like that. I asked the headmistress if she'd seen anyone near the gate, but she shook her head. I tucked the paper into my locket and went on teaching, though my thoughts often wandered to the mysterious old man. Weeks passed, and he didn't return. Life continued. My students prepared for exams, and the rainy season brought floods that soaked through my roof. Still, I tried to stay grateful. Every evening I wrote in my journal about one good thing that had happened. Helped me hold on to light and happiness. One afternoon I received a letter, thick parchment with no name on it. Inside was an official seal and a short message. You have been nominated for a National Teaching Fellowship in the city. Report in 2 weeks. I was stunned. I hadn't applied for anything like that. I showed the letter to the headmistress, who looked just as confused. Someone must have recommended you, she said, smiling. Maybe one of your former students. That night, I lay awake listening to the rain, wondering who would think of me. My heart raced with both fear and hope. I had never been beyond our province. The city was a different world, fast, loud, and unknown. But the thought of standing in front of other teachers, learning more, and maybe growing beyond this little classroom filled me with a kind of joy I hadn't felt in years. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamed of Father standing under the marigold tree saying, "Walk forward, my daughter. Don't look back." 2 weeks later, I packed my few clothes and boarded the old bus to the city. The road twisted through fields and mountains, each turn reminding me of the life I was leaving behind. When I arrived, the noise nearly overwhelmed me. Horns, shouting, laughter. It was as if the world had grown 10 times louder. The fellowship center was more beautiful than I imagined. Wide halls, tall windows, the smell of books and new beginnings. A young woman at the desk smiled when she saw my name. "We've been expecting you, Miss Nora," she said. "Your sponsor spoke highly of you." "My sponsor?" I asked, startled. She nodded. "Yes, the one who recommended you. He asked to remain anonymous, but he's been funding this fellowship for years." My heart pounded. Could it be the old man? It made no sense, yet the thought clung to me. The weeks that followed felt like a dream. I attended lectures, met other teachers, and saw how much more I could do for my students. Every evening, there was a sealed envelope waiting on my desk, each with an encouraging line written in that same slanted handwriting. "Keep believing. Keep giving." One day after class, I asked the staff about who might be leaving the notes. No one knew. The janitor said he'd seen a tall man in a brown hat drop something on my desk once, but that was all. The mystery deepened, but instead of fear, I felt a quiet comfort, as if someone out there truly saw me. A month later, I returned home to the village with a new sense of hope. The fellowship had given me ideas, confidence, and even a small grant to improve my classroom. The children cheered when they saw me again. But the joy was short-lived. Word spread fast. Clara's husband had been arrested for fraud, their mansion seized, and her so-called friends had vanished. People whispered that she'd left the city in shame. The day I returned from the fellowship in the city, the sun dipped behind a veil of orange haze, painting the road home in quiet gold. I carried with me a few books, a certificate, and a heart that no longer trembled with fear. The school children had decorated the front gate with flowers when they heard I was coming back. I laughed when I saw them, my little soldiers of hope, running barefoot through the dust to greet me. But even in their laughter, I sensed some whispers of unease. "Teacher Nora," one girl said, pulling my hand. "Someone has been looking for you." "Who?" I asked, surprised. "A woman," she said. "She came yesterday. She looked so sad." My heart tightened. I knew that voice before it even finished speaking. A small voice inside me whispered Clara. That evening, I returned to my rented room, tidied it as I always did, and lit a small candle near the window. Just as I placed my books on the table, there was a soft knock on the door. When I opened it, the fading light caught a face I hadn't seen in months. Pale, thinner, almost ghostly. It was my sister, the woman who had taken everything from me. Her eyes were swollen, her once polished nails broken. She was trembling. Her hair, once glowing with salon polish, hung limp over her shoulders. Her clothes were wrinkled. Her lips trembled. "Nora," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Can I come in?" For a long moment I couldn't speak. I was just standing there looking at her. My heart raced with many thoughts. The lawyer's office, her laughter, the blue gate, the whole betrayal scene flashed before me. Then I saw the shadow of Father's garden in my mind, and his voice. "Let kindness be your answer." I stepped aside and said quietly, "Come in." She looked at me, stunned. You mean I should come in after all the evil I've done against you? He nodded. Yes, Clara, come in, you are still my sister. She entered, her eyes darting around the small room. Oh, my God, is this where you've been living? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I answered and said. It's small but peaceful. Tears welled up in her eyes. She sank onto the wooden chair near the window and covered her face. I'm sorry, I've lost everything, Nora, she said, sobbing. My husband, the house, even the car. He's been arrested. They said he cheated the investors and committed fraud. Those people are after me. Nora, she whispered, voice cracking. Please. I have nowhere else to go. For the first time, I saw her not as the sister who had laughed at my pain, but as a lost child. I sat beside her, unsure of what to say. When she finally looked up, her eyes were swollen red. Nora, I'm sorry I was wrong, she whispered. All this time I thought I won. But it feels like everything I touched turned to dust. I wanted to hold her. But a small part of me still hesitated, afraid the wound was too deep. Instead, I said gently, You're safe here for tonight. Clara stayed in my room that night, sleeping on the narrow bed while I rested on a mat by the floor. Her quiet sobs came and went like faint waves. I couldn't sleep either. I kept thinking of Father, of how he used to sit on the porch and watch the stars, saying, Life will test your kindness when it's hardest to be kind. By dawn I made breakfast, boiled yam and stew. When Clara woke, she ate in silence. I need to find a work, she said after a long pause. I can't keep depending on others. You'll sure find your feet again, I said softly. Her tears fell fast. And at that moment, though I didn't yet know how, I felt that something far greater than either of us had just begun to unfold. She looked fragile, like a bird that had forgotten how to fly. Her expensive clothes were dirty, her shoes torn. The rain outside made the room smell of damp wood and earth. When she finished, she stared at her hands for a long time before whispering, Everything's gone, Nora. The cars, the house, even the jewelry. They took it all. I didn't know what to say. A part of me wanted to ask, and my inheritance, the one you laughed about. But another part, the one that still remembered her as my sister, only said, You're safe now. She gave a weak smile that quickly disappeared. Safe. I don't even know who I am anymore. I told her she could stay with me for as long as she needed. She nodded, but I could see her pride battling with her shame. That night, I heard her sobbing quietly. It wasn't the proud, sharp-tongued Clara I once knew. It was someone that was broken and lost. The next morning, she insisted on helping me at the school. I can clean or something, she said. I agreed, even though the idea felt strange. My once wealthy sister sweeping dusty floors. But the children greeted her kindly, and that seemed to soften her a little. As the days passed by, I noticed her watching me when I spoke to the students or shared my food with them. Sometimes she'd open her mouth as if to say something, but then stopped. One evening, as I locked the classroom, I found a folded envelope under the blackboard. My heart raced. Inside was a familiar handwriting, that same slanted script. The one who gives without keeping score receives more than she'll ever know. There was no name, but a faint scent of jasmine clung to the paper, the same scent the old man used to wear. The mysterious notes began appearing again, each with gentle words that seemed to know what I needed to hear at a time. Your kindness is your shield. Patience turns loss into light. I told Clara, but she didn't believe me. Maybe you're just writing them to make yourself feel special, she muttered one morning. Her voice carried the bitterness of someone not yet ready to face herself. Still, I was not angry. Instead, I said softly, if believing helps me stay kind, then I'll keep believing. Somehow, something started shifting in the village. Parents began stopping by the school to thank me. A few of them offered small donations to help repaint the walls. One even promised to send wooden desks and did. It was as if invisible hands were guiding small blessings my way. One afternoon, while returning from the market, I saw a man watching from across the street. He wore a brown hat and leaned on a cane. My heart skipped. Could it be him? When I turned to call out, he was gone. That night, Clara asked, "What if all this is just a luck? Maybe you're finally getting what you deserved." I smiled faintly. Maybe kindness just takes time to find its way home. She looked away, pretending not to hear. A few days later, I received a sealed letter marked private. Inside was an invitation to a Community Development Award ceremony in the city. My name was listed among the top nominees. I was shocked. I hadn't even applied. At the bottom of the letter were those same words again. Kindness never walks alone. The ceremony was set for the following Saturday. Clara insisted on coming with me. "Maybe if they see I'm with you, I can meet someone who can give me a job," she said. I agreed, though I sensed she was still struggling to swallow her pride. We took the early morning bus to the city. I wore my only decent dress, the one I'd mended countless times, while Clara wore a faded blouse that once screamed wealth. The contrast between us was painful to watch. The venue was grand. Chandeliers, velvet curtains, and people dressed in glittering clothes. I felt small at first, but when I saw the banner that read, "Honoring Hearts That Build Hope," my heart lifted. As names were called, I clapped for each teacher and volunteer. When my name echoed through the microphone, I froze. The crowd turned, applauding. My hands shook as I walked to the stage. A man in a dark suit handed me the award, a glass plaque shaped like an open hand. "You remind us that even one act of kindness can ripple through generations," he said warmly. When I looked up, I saw a figure at the back of the hall. The brown hat, the same old cane. The old man. I blinked, and he was gone again. After the ceremony, Clara said nothing on the way home. But I noticed her watching me differently. Not with envy but confusion, as if she was seeing me for the first time. That night, as I placed the award beside Father's photo, I whispered, "I wish you could see this." But in my heart I felt he already did. Days passed peacefully. Clara began volunteering at the school, helping me grade papers and sweep classrooms. It wasn't easy for her. Every kind word from a child seemed to sting her pride, but slowly she softened. One morning, she came to me holding one of the mysterious notes. "This was under my pillow," she said quietly. Her voice trembled. I took the note and read it aloud. "Forgiveness is the key that frees both hearts." She sat down hard, her eyes wet. "Why would someone write this to me? They don't know what I've done." "Maybe they do," I said gently. "Or maybe they just see you trying." That afternoon, I went to visit the village post office, hoping to trace where the letters had come from. The postmaster frowned and said, "They all come from the city, same handwriting, same postmark, but no sender name. Always prepaid." As I walked home, a strange thought settled in me. Whoever this benefactor was, they had been watching both Clara and me, guiding us silently toward something. That night, a storm rolled through the village, shaking the roof. Lightning flashed, and for a second, I thought I saw a shadow at my window, the shape of a man with a cane. When I rushed to look, no one was there. But on the windowsill lay another note. "Tomorrow brings truth." Barely slept. The next morning, the sky was still gray from the storm. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, anxious. "Do you think something's going to happen today?" she asked. "I don't know," I said, though my heart thumped with uneasy hope. Around noon, a messenger arrived at the school carrying a brown envelope. "For Miss Nora," he said. Inside was a letter with a gold seal and a short line. "You are requested to attend the reading of the final estate of your late father, to be held this Friday at noon." My knees almost gave way. Father's estate had already been read, or so I thought. Clara paled. "This must be a mistake," she whispered. But deep down I knew it wasn't. The timing, the notes, the old man, it all pointed here. When Friday came, Clara and I traveled back to the lawyer's office where our story had begun. Everything looked the same. The ticking clock, the wooden desk, the scent of paper and dust. But the man waiting there wasn't our old lawyer. It was him, the old man with the brown hat. He removed it slowly, revealing a calm, familiar face. "Miss Nora," he said softly, "your father asked me to guard something until the right time came." Clara gasped. "Who are you?" He smiled faintly. "Your father's most loyal friend, and his last test of love." Before I could speak, he placed 2 envelopes on the table, one for Clara, one for me. And as he leaned back in his chair, his eyes glimmered with a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to face. When we came back from the lawyer's office that day, she looked at me, guilt heavy in her eyes. "Nora, there's something you should know. The lawyer father used. He disappeared after the funeral. I think he hid something. My husband once mentioned seeing him talking to someone near the village school weeks after father died. But when I asked, he refused to tell me what it was." My heart skipped. The old man by the gate. Could that have been him? I didn't speak the thought aloud. That afternoon I went to the school, and on the gatepost where the old man used to sit, I found something new. A small wooden box wrapped in a thin white cloth. My hands trembled as I unwrapped it. Inside was a sealed envelope, the same kind of parchment the lawyer used. It was addressed, "To Nora, to be opened when kindness returns home." I rushed back to the room, tears stinging my eyes. Clara sat waiting, confused as I tore open the letter. The handwriting was shaky but clear. "Your father trusted love more than law. The first will you saw was a mirror, not a truth. The true inheritance belongs to the one who carried his heart, not his land. When the day comes that both sisters stand together again, the truth shall be yours." Beneath the note was a key, old, bronze, and heavy. Clara stared. "A key to what?" "I don't know," I whispered. But deep inside I felt something shift, the beginning of an answer. We spent the next day searching through father's old house, though Clara had long sold most of the land. One small storage room remained, locked, untouched. The key fit perfectly. Inside, dust floated like thin ghosts. On an old wooden table lay a single chest. When we opened it, stacks of papers, journals, and faded photos greeted us. At the bottom, wrapped in cloth, was another envelope, this one sealed with red wax. Clara and I stared at it. My hands shook as I broke the seal. The first words froze us both. "Last will and testament of Samuel Hadibe." Clara gasped. "No, that's not possible. I already. This one's dated a week after the one you took," I said, my voice trembling. I kept reading. "To my daughters I leave not what they desire, but what they deserve. To Clara, who values wealth, I leave the company shares she has already claimed. To Nora, whose kindness cannot be priced, I leave the family home and the land upon which her school stands. Let her build light where others see dust." Tears rolled down my face. I couldn't believe it. Clara covered her mouth. He changed it." "No," I whispered. "He completed it." In that moment Clara broke down, crying so hard I could barely hold her. All her pride melted away, leaving behind a sister I hadn't seen in years. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," she said. I hugged her, trembling. "It's not about deserving. It's about love." The next few days were a blur. The lawyer, the old man by the gate, had passed away shortly after leaving the final letter, according to the village clerk. But he had left instructions at the court, confirming the second will. When I stood before the magistrate, holding that parchment, my hands felt both light and heavy. Clara sat beside me, her eyes lowered. The court confirmed it. The house, the land, everything I thought I'd lost was legally mine. But as the clerk handed me the final paper, I looked at Clara and said, "We'll share it." She looked up sharply. "What?" "You'll stay here with me if you want. I'm not building walls anymore." Her eyes filled again. "After everything I did." "Yes," I said. "Maybe that's what Father wanted all along, to bring us home." That evening, the sky cracked with thunder, the rain drumming softly on the roof. We sat by the fire, not as enemies, but as sisters rediscovering what family meant. Clara spoke quietly. "You know, when I first took the inheritance, I thought I was proving something. But I only proved how small my heart was. You've learned now, I said. She smiled faintly. Maybe you were the richer one all along. A month passed. The school grew larger. The community helped build new classrooms. Children's laughter filled the air like music. Clara found peace helping there, teaching art and music to the little ones. She laughed again. Not the cold laughter of triumph, but the warm laughter of grace. Sometimes when I saw her painting with the children, I thought of Father and the quiet way he must be smiling from above. One afternoon, as the sun sank low, Clara approached me near the gate. "Nora," she said softly, "thank you." "For what?" "For opening the door that day," she said. "You could have shut me out forever." Smiled. "Kindness doesn't lock doors." She nodded, eyes glistening. "You taught me that." The wind carried her words across the field, and in that moment, I finally understood the meaning of the note. Kindness never walks alone. It had led me through pain, through loss, through betrayal, and now it had brought me home. The days after the second will's revelation passed like soft rain washing an old wound. The bitterness that had once filled our home slowly drained away. Clara began rising early each morning, sweeping the courtyard, tending to the flowers, and preparing breakfast before I even woke up. One morning I found her outside the school gate, painting a faded signboard that read Hattie Bay Community Learning Center. The same gate where our father once stood and smiled at children now gleamed again under the sunlight. "You did this?" I asked, surprised. She smiled shyly, wiping sweat from her brow. "It was falling apart. I thought it deserved better." Her voice held something new. Gentleness. It startled me how much she had changed. The villagers noticed too. Those who once whispered about her arrogance now nodded in quiet respect when she passed. Some even brought her food, thanking her for teaching their children to draw and sing. One afternoon after the classes ended, I found Clara sitting beneath the mango tree, sketching the children as they played. I sat beside her. "They love you," I said. She laughed softly. "They don't know what I did." "They don't need to," I said. "You're showing them who you are now." Her eyes welled up. "Nora, I used to think kindness was weakness, that being loud meant being right. But watching you," she paused, swallowing her words, "I finally see what strength really is." I smiled, looking at the sun dipping low. "It's never too late to start again, Clara." That night, as we ate dinner together, she whispered, "Maybe Father planned this. Maybe he knew that losing everything would make me find myself." He nodded. "Maybe his will wasn't just about inheritance. It was about inheritance of spirit." She smiled faintly. "And I'm finally ready to carry mine." It was during the village's harvest festival that Clara's redemption became truly visible. Every year, the town gathered by the square, lighting lanterns, playing drums, and dancing under the moon. This year, the elders asked if our school children could perform a song. Clara offered to lead them. For days, she rehearsed with those kids, teaching them melody and rhythm. Her laughter echoed through the courtyard, something I hadn't heard in so long that it filled me with quiet joy. The night of the festival arrived. The square glowed with lanterns, the scent of roasted corn filling the air. Clara stood at the center, her voice calm but strong as the children began to sing. "Hearts that give will never fade. Kindness builds what greed betrayed." The crowd fell silent, then erupted in applause. Tears streamed down my face as I watched her bow with the children. After the performance, an elder approached us, the same one who once scolded her for her pride. "Clara," he said, "your father would be proud tonight." She bowed her head, trembling. "Thank you, sir." Later that evening, as the music faded and the villagers danced around the fire, Clara and I sat together, watching the flames. "I thought I'd lost everything," she said, staring into the light. "But maybe I had to lose the wrong things to find the right ones." I smiled, holding her hand. That's how redemption begins. In the distance, fireflies rose from the fields, twinkling like small souls set free. The following week, a stranger came to the school. He was tall, gray-haired, and carried a briefcase. "Are you Nora Hadibe?" he asked. "Yes," I said, confused. He introduced himself as Mr. Rayleigh Venn, a lawyer from the city. "I worked with your father's attorney before he passed. I believe I have something that belongs to you." He opened the briefcase and handed me a sealed envelope. Clara stood beside me, nervous. Inside was a letter, written in my father's familiar handwriting. "My dear Nora, if you are reading this, then life has unfolded as I hoped it would. I feared that my daughters' hearts would be divided by gold. So I left behind not just two wills but two paths, one for pride, one for peace. You, Nora, were my compass of kindness. But I wanted Clara to find hers. I entrusted my lawyer to watch over you both, not to punish but to test your hearts. If you forgive her, then the circle is complete, and my soul can rest." I read the words aloud, tears flowing freely. Clara wept openly, holding the letter against her chest. "He loved us both, even when I didn't deserve it." "He always did," I whispered. Mr. Rayleigh Venn smiled faintly. "Your father once said something I never forgot. Love is the only inheritance that stays forever." That night, we lit a candle for Father by the window. The flame flickered gently, and for a brief moment, I swore I could feel his presence. Warm, forgiving, eternal. Months passed, and life blossomed anew. The school expanded with new classrooms, and more children from neighboring villages joined. The laughter, the lessons, the bright faces. All of it gave me purpose. Clara became the school's art teacher officially. Her drawings filled the walls with color. Trees, birds, smiling children. Parents often stopped by to watch her teach, amazed at her patience. One afternoon after class, I found her standing near the old mango tree again. "You know," she said, smiling faintly, "for the first time in my life I don't envy you." I chuckled softly. "That's progress." She nodded. "I used to think I was better because I had more. But now I realize you were richer all along. I only wish I'd learned sooner." "It's never too late," I said. She turned to me, eyes bright. "You forgave me, Nora. That changed everything. I want to spend the rest of my life doing the same. Giving back." Hugged her. Then Father's wish came true. As we pulled apart, she pointed toward the school. "You've built something beautiful here. I want to help make it even bigger. Maybe add a library in Father's name." Smiled. "He would love that." And just like that we began to plan, not as rivals but as partners in something greater than both of us. The day the library was completed, the whole village gathered again. The building stood proudly beside the classrooms, painted white and gold, with a simple plaque at the entrance. Samuel Hadibe Memorial Library. Built on kindness. As we unveiled it, Clara stood beside me, holding my hand tightly. Tears shimmered in her eyes. "This is his real inheritance," she whispered. "Not the land, not the money, this." Children poured in, touching books they'd never seen before. Their laughter echoed through the hall like sweet music. The mayor gave a short speech, praising our family's contribution to education. But when it was my turn to speak, I turned to the crowd and said, "My father once taught me that kindness is the only wealth that grows when shared. This library isn't just ours. It belongs to everyone who believes in second chances." The applause that followed carried something sacred. Forgiveness, unity, renewal. Later that evening, Clara and I sat on the steps, watching the sunset paint the library in orange light. She rested her head on my shoulder. "I used to think you were weak," she said softly. "Now I know, you were strong in all the ways that mattered." Smiled. "And you found your strength too, the kind that heals." She nodded, closing her eyes. "I guess we both inherited it from our father." The sky turned gold and the breeze whispered through the trees. I felt peace settle in my chest. For the first time in years, everything was whole again. The rains returned that month. Thick, silver curtains that soaked the village fields. The roof of the new library drummed softly as students huddled inside, reading by lantern light. It felt like the world had finally settled into calm. Then one evening Clara came to me, her face pale. "Nora," she whispered, "I need to tell you something." She held a letter from the bank. I took it, scanning the lines. My stomach tightened. The contractor who had built the library had overcharged us, forging receipts. A huge debt now sat under our names. "I should have checked before signing," Clara said, her voice trembling. I was too eager to finish the project. I took her hand. "We'll fix this together." But deep inside, fear stirred. If we didn't pay soon, the bank could seize the property. The next morning we went to the mayor. He frowned after hearing our story. "The man left town last week. But I'll send word to the city police. Maybe they can find him." Days passed with no update. Meanwhile, Clara began selling her jewelry, her clothes, everything she had left from her old life, to repay part of the loan. Watching her hurt but still fighting reminded me of the woman she used to be. Proud, sharp, and quick to run. But now she stayed, humbled and strong. One night, as she handed me a small bag of coins, she said quietly, "Maybe this is my last test, to see if I've really changed." I smiled sadly. "Then we'll pass it together." Outside, the rain fell heavier, washing away the dust of old mistakes. Weeks later, we received a message from the city police. The contractor had been caught. Relief flooded us, but the joy was short-lived. He had already spent most of the stolen money. We would only recover a fraction. I felt the walls closing in again. The bank's deadline loomed. Clara, however, didn't give up. She began organizing a charity fair with the villagers, selling crafts, food, handmade books, anything that could raise funds. Children volunteered too, painting signs that read, "Save our library." On the day of the fair, the sky cleared for the first time in weeks. The entire village gathered. Music played, laughter rang, and for a few precious hours, hope felt tangible again. As the day ended, Clara stood before the crowd, tears glistening in her eyes. "I once took more than I gave," she said. "But today, I give everything I have back to the place that saved me." Her voice broke, but the crowd cheered. Even the elders who once shunned her clapped. By nightfall, we had raised enough to cover the debt. When we walked home, Clara whispered, "Nora, I think Father was right. The real inheritance was never gold. It was people." I nodded, eyes wet. "And you've finally earned yours." That night, as we locked the library door, the stars above seemed to burn brighter, like Father himself was watching, proud and at peace. Life moved forward in quiet grace. Our school grew into a small learning center recognized across districts. Children who once played barefoot in the mud now spoke of dreams, becoming teachers, doctors, and leaders. One afternoon, I received a letter from the Ministry of Education inviting me to the city for an award, Teacher of the Year for Community Service. When I told Clara, she cried, "You deserve it, Nora. Father would be so proud." "I wish you could come," I said. "I will," she promised. The ceremony took place in a grand hall. Lights, cameras, applause, a world far from our humble school. When they called my name, I walked to the stage, trembling. As I accepted the plaque, I looked out at the crowd and saw her. Clara, standing at the back, clapping through tears. After the ceremony, I found her outside, leaning against the wall. "You made it," I said. She smiled faintly. "I almost didn't. I had to sell my last gold bangle for the bus fare." I held her hands. "You didn't need to." She laughed softly. "I wanted to. I needed to see this, you standing where you belong." That night, as we returned home, the bus rattled along the dark highway. She looked out the window and whispered, "Maybe this is what redemption feels like. Quiet, steady, and finally enough." A few weeks later, a knock came at our door just after dawn. A delivery man handed me a large envelope. Inside was a document with an official seal. Our father's farmland, recently reclaimed by the government for community development, had been revalued. They were offering compensation in the form of a large grant. My hands shook as I read. It was enough to secure the school's future for years, enough to build new classrooms and dormitories. Clara gasped when I showed her. "It's like he's still blessing us," she said softly. That afternoon we visited the land one last time. The fields stretched golden under the sun, the same place we once played as children. Clara knelt and touched the soil. "I used to see this land as money," she whispered. "Now I see it as memory." We stood there, silent, the wind brushing our hair. I thought of Father, of the quiet test he'd set in motion, and how it had reshaped us both. On our way back we stopped by the school. The children ran out, laughing. Clara lifted a small girl and spun her around. I took a deep breath, feeling something close inside me, a circle finally complete. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, I lit a candle by the window again. Its flame danced steadily as if whispering, "Well done." Months later, on a cool evening, I sat on the porch watching the children chase fireflies across the yard. The air smelled of earth and new beginnings. Clara came out carrying 2 mugs of tea. "Do you ever think about how it all began?" she asked. Smiled. "Every day." She sat beside me. "If I could go back, I'd change everything." I shook my head. Maybe it had to happen this way. Maybe the fall was the only way for both of us to rise. She nodded slowly. "You've always found light in the dark, Nora." We sipped our tea in silence for a while. Then she said, "I want to open an art scholarship for children who can't afford school. I'll name it after Father." My chest warmed. He'd love that. A soft breeze stirred the lanterns above us. The schoolyard glowed faintly under the moon. After a long pause, I said quietly, "Do you remember what Father used to say?" Clara smiled. "That kindness is the only inheritance that never runs out." I turned to her. "He was right. You took my inheritance once, but you gave me something better in return. You gave me peace." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "And you gave me forgiveness." We sat there side by side, watching the children's laughter rise into the night, a sound pure enough to heal anything. I looked up at the stars and whispered, "Thank you, Father." Then Clara turned to me and said the words that closed the circle of our story. "The inheritance you take with greed fades fast. The one built on kindness and honesty stays forever." The night settled softly around us, full of grace, and for the first time I truly felt rich. This is the end of my story. Thanks for listening.